Don't buy salmon from these 7 brands. Here's what's inside. Salmon has long enjoyed a near-sacred status in the world of healthy eating. Rich in omega-3 fatty acids, packed with vitamin B12, selenium, and high-quality protein, it checks nearly every box on a nutritionist's wish list. Americans, Canadians, and consumers worldwide eat billions of dollars worth of salmon every year. And why wouldn't they? The marketing is compelling, the taste is crowd-pleasing, and the health halo is undeniable. But what if the fish on your plate isn't quite what you think it is? Behind the gleaming pink fillets in your supermarket's refrigerated aisle, there is a murkier story. One involving bacterial contamination, synthetic dyes derived from petrochemicals, pesticide residues, antibiotic overuse, and a string of FDA recalls that have affected millions of consumers. Not all salmon is created equal, and some brands have ended up on the wrong side of food safety history. This article breaks down 7 salmon brands that have raised serious red flags due to documented recalls, contamination events, questionable farming practices, or troubling ingredient disclosures, and explains exactly what inspectors, scientists, and food safety officials have found inside. The hidden world inside your salmon fillet. Before diving into the specific brands, it helps to understand why salmon, seemingly so simple and natural, can harbor so many hidden issues. Bacterial contamination is the most immediate concern. Listeria monocytogenes, the pathogen responsible for listeriosis, thrives in cold, moist environments, exactly the conditions in which smoked and vacuum-sealed salmon is stored and sold. Unlike many bacteria, listeria can survive and even multiply at refrigerator temperatures, making it particularly dangerous in ready-to-eat products that require no further cooking before consumption. Farmed salmon's dirty secret goes deeper than bacteria. The overwhelming majority of Atlantic salmon sold globally is farmed in open-net pen aquaculture operations, floating cages anchored in coastal waters. In these environments, fish are raised at densities far higher than anything found in nature, creating conditions that are ideal for disease and parasites, particularly sea lice. To combat this, farmers use a cocktail of pesticides and antibiotics, some of which can accumulate in the fish flesh itself. Then there is the color question. Wild salmon are naturally pink because they consume krill and other crustaceans rich in carotenoids, particularly a powerful antioxidant called astaxanthin. Farmed salmon, fed on processed pellets made from corn, soy, poultry byproducts, and fish meal, would naturally be a pale, unappetizing gray. To solve this cosmetic problem, the industry adds synthetic astaxanthin, a substance manufactured from petrochemicals, to fish feed. According to Algatech, one of the world's leading manufacturers of the compound, essentially all astaxanthin used in aquaculture is a petrochemical product. Scientists have noted that this synthetic form may not behave the same way in the human body as the natural carotenoid found in wild fish. With that context in mind, here are 7 salmon brands that deserve serious scrutiny. 1. Kirkland Signature, Costco. Listeria, Class 1 recall. Costco's house brand is one of the best-selling smoked salmon labels in the United States, and for good reason. The price is competitive and the quality has generally been considered reliable. But in October 2024, the Acme Smoked Fish Corporation, which produces Kirkland Signature smoked salmon, raised the alarm over possible Listeria monocytogenes contamination. The affected products were vacuum-sealed in twin 12-ounce plastic packages and had been distributed to Costco's Southeast Distribution Center in West Palm Beach, Florida, as well as to Costco warehouse stores across the southeastern United States. In January 2025, the FDA escalated its classification to a Class 1 recall, the agency's most severe designation, reserved for situations where exposure to a product carries a reasonable probability of serious illness or death. Listeria monocytogenes can cause listeriosis, a disease whose symptoms in healthy adults include fever, diarrhea, headache, and muscle aches. In pregnant women, the elderly, young children, and immunocompromised individuals, the infection can be fatal. Because cold-smoked salmon undergoes no full heat treatment, any bacterial contamination present in the raw fish or processing environment survives to the consumer's plate. While no consumer illnesses were linked to this specific lot at the time of reporting, the Class 1 designation reflects the potential severity of the risk. Kirkland's otherwise strong reputation makes this recall all the more unsettling. Even trusted brands can fail. 2. Foppen Seafood, smoked Norwegian salmon slices, dual recall, 15 states. Netherlands-based Foppen Seafood, a specialist in smoked salmon products, had a difficult 2024. In June of that year, the company issued a recall of its smoked Norwegian salmon slices, sold in 8.1-ounce, toast-sized packages, after routine testing revealed the presence of Listeria monocytogenes in Lot 412. By August 2024, the FDA had upgraded the recall to a Class 1 classification, its most severe risk level. The products had been sold at Kroger and Payless supermarkets across 15 states, including Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Missouri, Mississippi, Ohio, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and West Virginia, reaching a wide swath of American consumers. What makes Foppen's situation particularly concerning is that the company returned to the recall list later in 2024, flagged again for possible Listeria contamination. 2 high-profile Listeria events in the same calendar year from a single brand is a serious pattern, suggesting that the underlying hygiene or environmental control failures at the processing level were not fully resolved after the first incident. 3. Mariscos Bahia. Salmonella outbreak. 300,000 pounds recalled. Few salmon recalls have been as sweeping in scale as the one involving Mariscos Bahia, a California-based seafood company. In October 2022, more than 300,000 pounds of raw fish were recalled after a salmonella outbreak was traced back to the company's facility in Pico Rivera, California. The California Department of Public Health discovered the contamination after conducting environmental sampling at the Mariscos Bahia processing plant, finding the pathogen in the facility itself and linking it definitively to the outbreak. The raw salmon had been supplied to restaurants across California and Arizona. Salmonella is one of the most widespread causes of foodborne illness globally. Most infected individuals experience diarrhea, stomach cramps, and fever beginning within 8 to 72 hours of exposure. While the majority of cases resolve on their own, severe infections can become life-threatening, especially for young children, the elderly, and those with compromised immune systems. The sheer volume of fish recalled, roughly 150 tons, and the restaurant supply chain involved meant that an unknown number of diners consumed potentially contaminated fish without any warning. This recall stands as one of the most significant salmon food safety failures in recent American history. 4. Ocean Group, Inc. Listeria found in cutting board and drain. Los Angeles-based Ocean Group, Inc. issued a voluntary recall on November 1, 2024, covering multiple salmon and tuna products after the FDA conducted environmental sampling at the company's facility and discovered Listeria monocytogenes on a cutting board and a floor drain, 2 of the most direct points of contact with food products. The affected salmon products had been distributed to retail stores and restaurants throughout California. While the recall was initially classified as Class 2, meaning the probability of severe injury was lower but not negligible, the nature of the contamination discovery is alarming. Listeria found on food contact surfaces like cutting boards does not simply stay there. It transfers directly to fish that are being sliced and packaged for sale. The fact that an FDA environmental inspection identified the contamination rather than the company itself detecting it through internal quality controls raises questions about the rigor of Ocean Group's food safety protocols. Recalls prompted by regulatory discovery rather than internal detection are generally considered a more serious indicator of systemic failure. 5. Wellesley Farms, farm-raised Atlantic salmon, 2026 recall. In February 2026, Wellesley Farms announced a recall of its 2-pound packs of farm-raised Atlantic salmon due to possible contamination risk. The recall, published by Food Safety News on February 20th, 2026, reflects the ongoing vulnerability of farm-raised Atlantic salmon to contamination events throughout the supply chain. Wellesley Farms products are positioned as accessible, budget-friendly options for everyday consumers, making a contamination event particularly concerning, as these are shoppers who may be purchasing the product regularly as a dietary staple. Farm-raised Atlantic salmon also carries the additional concerns associated with intensive aquaculture practices, synthetic coloring agents in the feed, potential antibiotic residues, and higher levels of saturated fat compared to wild-caught alternatives. 6. Sea Passion/Jensen's Old Fashion, Smokehouse/Rayleigh's shared source recall. Sometimes the problem isn't one brand, it's one source supplying multiple brands. A recall affecting products sold under 3 different labels, Sea Passion, Jensen's Old Fashioned Smokehouse, and Rayleigh's, illustrated how a single contaminated processing facility or supplier can cascade across the retail landscape under different brand names. The smoked salmon products, sold in a range of package sizes in both fresh and frozen form, were subject to recall due to contamination concerns. For consumers, this kind of multi-brand event is particularly difficult to navigate. You might avoid one label and unknowingly purchase another that came from the exact same compromised batch. This highlights a structural weakness in salmon labeling. The brand on the front of the package often tells you very little about where the fish was actually processed, which facility handled it, or who else is selling salmon from the same source. 7. Generic and private label farmed Atlantic salmon, the systemic problem. Beyond individual brand recalls, there is a broader category of concern: unlabeled or vaguely labeled farm-raised Atlantic salmon that carries no meaningful transparency about its country of origin, farming practices, antibiotic use, or the source of its pigmentation. Research published in Environmental Health Perspectives has suggested that frequent consumption of certain farmed salmon can be associated with increased health concerns, with studies pointing to the accumulation of polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, dioxins, and other persistent organic pollutants in the fat of farmed fish. Because farmed salmon carry significantly more fat than wild fish, partly due to their sedentary lifestyle in crowded pens, they also accumulate more fat-soluble contaminants. The pesticides used to combat sea lice are another concern. At least 11 compounds, including dichlorvos, azamethyphos, and cypermethrin, are deployed on salmon farms worldwide. Dichlorvos, in particular, has been found in fish flesh and is considered toxic. Research from the National Toxicology Program has linked it to tumor development in animal studies. Chile, the world's second-largest salmon producer, has historically used antibiotics at rates far higher than Norway, raising concerns about antibiotic-resistant bacteria developing in marine environments and potentially passing through the food chain to human consumers. What to buy instead? Navigating the salmon aisle doesn't have to mean giving up the fish entirely. The key is knowing what to look for. Wild-caught Alaskan sockeye or pink salmon are consistently among the most sustainably sourced and lowest contamination options. Alaskan fisheries are tightly regulated, and wild salmon have no need for antibiotics or synthetic pigments. MSC, Marine Stewardship Council, certification on wild salmon indicates adherence to rigorous sustainability standards. Transparent labels that clearly state country of origin, whether the fish is farmed or wild, and whether antibiotics were used are a sign of a brand with nothing to hide. Canned wild Alaskan salmon, often overlooked, is one of the most affordable and consistently safe ways to consume salmon, with levels of contaminants that consistently fall within safe ranges. The bottom line: salmon can absolutely be part of a healthy diet. But the healthy fish narrative has been so effectively marketed that many consumers never think to question what's actually in the product they're buying. The brands and cases outlined above are not anomalies in an otherwise pristine industry. They are symptoms of systemic pressures in modern seafood production, from the race to the bottom, on price to the environmental strains of industrial aquaculture. Reading labels, demanding transparency, and choosing wild-caught options when possible are not acts of paranoia. They are acts of informed consumption in a market that has repeatedly shown it will not always put your health first. The salmon is beautiful. Just make sure you know where it's been.